Right. So hello and good afternoon, everyone. So thank you again for joining our free online lesson. Okay. So I hope you guys can see me. So there has been some issue with our Zoom for now. Okay. Right. So I believe should be okay already. So thank you again for joining our free online lesson. Right. So my name is Nabil Fikri bin Shaizan and I am an application engineer. So for today's topics, I would like to share with you about the AutoCAD Dimensioning. So, so this will be the agenda for today. So the first one, we're going to take a look on the dimension types. So we're going to go through with some of the dimension that you can use, whether you want to dimension the linear, which is the X and Y axis. So maybe you want to create a dimension for a line, and then let's say you wanted to measure the angles, radius, diameters, and so on. So that will be the dimension type. So the next one will be the dimension style. So of course, each of the company has its own dimension style. So whether the dimension size or the fonts or the colors, anything else. So that will be the things that we will be covering. So we will be covering on modifying the dimension for the dimension styles, such as we can modify the line, symbol arrow, text, feeds, tolerance, and so on. And lastly, we're just going to go through with some extra dimension tools, which we can find on the annotate tab. So there are some extra things that we can go through with that. So let me share my AutoCAD software. So this is so this is the my sample files for the AutoCAD. So we'll be go through with some of these sample file just to go with the dimension. So welcome. Okay, so let me start with this. So from the home panels, you can see the annotate ribbon over here, and then you should be able to see this dimension. Besides the dimension, we have this linear. So if you drop down, you will see a line, angular, arc, and some other things. So this will be the dimension. What you see over here, this is more like auto dimensioning. So we will go through with this manual dimension first. So let's get started. So this is the samples that I have. So let's say if you wanted to measure the X or the Y, for that you can go over here, and then we have this linear, so which will allow you to measure, create a dimensioning horizontally or vertically. So this is dimension for linear. So if you have this angle line over here, is if I try to use linear, it's still going to give me this horizontal or verticals. So if you wanted to have this, you needed to use a line dimension instead. So a line you can find from here, click a line, and it should be able to give you the exact size instead of the horizontal or vertical that you see on the linear over here. So that is a line. I can also click from this point to another point, and it will give me this distance between these 2 points. So you don't actually need to have this line over here, just need to click 2 points and it will able to create it for you. So same goes with the linear over here. So if I still want, I just click this 2 point and it will give me. So that is the distance for linear and also lines. So let's say if you wanted to measure the angle, the angular, so for that you need to have 2 lines. So if I click angle over here and I wanted to see the angles, so I just click the first line and the second line, and it will give me this angle that I can see. Now, if I wanted to have on the other side with this one, so I needed to have another line which allows me to measure the angle. So I need to create a line from here, and only then it can create the angle dimension for me. So I can also go and create dimension from here as well, and some of the things that you can find. Right, so that will be the angle. Basically, you use angle to click two lines, and then you will create the angle dimension between these two. All right, so the next one we have arc length. So arc length is allowing to measure the distance as well, like a linear and a line, but for the arc. So for this case, let's say I have this this arc over here that I wanted to measure how the distance between this, and it will be rotated until here. So for that, I can use arc, pick the line, and it will give me this arc. Now, if you try to use arc on the circles, you will not be able to measure because it is a full rotation. So it's only for the arcs only. Right, so you can see it is measure the distance between one point, and then it rotates the entire line. The next one we have radius and also dimension, so quite similar. Basically, you use radius and dimension to measure the dimension of a circles or arc. So if I have this circle over here, so I can use, let's say if I wanted to measure the radius, I just pick the radius, click on the circles, and it will give me this R symbol, which indicates R means radius. If I wanted to have a dimension, I can pick dimensions, click on the circles, and it will give me these dimensioning symbols over here. So that is radius and diameter. Below over here, we have ordinate and jog. So ordinate and jog. Okay, so let's go with the ordinate first. The ordinate basically allows you to measure the coordinates of your points. So let me just set it back, my UCS to the wall. Basically mean the origin point. Right, so let's say I have this icon over here, and I want to have, I want to measure it. These points, the x-axis based on this origin point. So I want to have this ordinate. I can use ordinate, and I can pick over here these points, and then it will give me this 208 something based on this origin point from here. So if I create, let's say 3x, and the y will be, let's say 4, and then let's say over here, if I click ordinates and I click at these points, so this point at the below here, it will show me the x direction, the x coordinate from this. And if I wanted to see on the y direction, so ordinates, click, and instead I will move downward here, so I can move left or right, and it will give me the y direction. So same again with the x, I can also move to the up, and it will give me this x coordinate. The coordinate usually are based from this UCS, right? So this origin point, y, x, we call it as a UCS. So if I have some other direction which is created from here, and I want this to be my origin point, so either you move this entire object and move this point into this coordinate xy origin, or you can also move your origin into this point. So if I use ordinate, it will show me 208, but I don't want that. This will be my origin. So let me move my UCS. So for that, I can type in the command UCS, or so let me just delete this one first. So you can type in UCS, press enter, and it will allow you to move your UCS, your coordinate system. And I can click over here, and I can try to make sure it's aligned properly. So once I'm done, I just need to create the ordinates, and it will give me, so this is the 0x direction and also y. So basically means the origin. If I want to have this point as well, so let me just delete this one. So I can click. So I have this point is actually on 1875 x and also y. So I can just use this ordinate, so I can know the origin point from here. So I can measure its coordinate. Now that is the ordinate, and we also have jog. Jog basically means for radius. It's a radius. However, if you have a radius which is too big, an arc which is too big, and you don't want to see the entire line, so for that case you can use jog. Right, so welcome Muhammad Amin. Okay, so let's say I have this arc over here, and then if I use radius, so you can see that my line is quite big, or maybe I want to use from here as well, also can. The best way is that you can use jog. So jog will indicates that if I don't want to link with my center point of these circles, so I can use jog. Jog. So select the arc, and I can specify the center points. So I don't want to be here. Let's say I just click center point over here, and it will show me this is my jog, which is my radius for this arc. So you can create something like this if you don't want to point this one into the original center point. But however, if I still select this point and I try to move to the center point, and then you can see it is actually become a straight line, so it is know where the point actually is. Okay, so that is the jog. Right? Basically, everything from here is a bit manual process. So if you wanted to have a line, just pick line. You want to use an angular, But over here we have the dimension, which is what I would like to call as auto dimension. What it does is that it allows you to automatically create the dimensioning line. For example, if I have this line over here, I just need to pick this dimension. I can either select these 2 points that I have created before, or I can also select the line and it will automatically create the line over here. So if I use linear, I can only select point, but I cannot select the line as well. So dimensioning will be much quicker. And not only that, it's also allowed to create, let's say, not just for line and point to point, I can also create for a line. So I just pick from here, and then you can see it create a line from, so I don't have to select one by one from here. So it will create automatically. So line, angular also can. I just pick this line, it will show me this line, and I just pick the other line, it will now turn into an angular. So if I want to do on the circle or an arc, if I use the dimension on the circles, automatically it will create the dimension symbols over here. If I click an arc, it will automatically create a radius. Now, if I don't want my arc to be a radius showing over here, I want to show as a diameter. So I can click and I can right click and select diameter, and it will give me the diameter symbol instead. So same goes with the full circles. It will give me the diameter. I don't want diameter. I can right click and select radius. It will give me the radius symbol from here. Much quicker when you use dimension. We have some of this in the dimension. So let's say you already know how to use dimension. Next thing that you would like to do is that you want to configure how your dimensioning actually looks. So that will be the dimension style. So maybe you want to have different textiles, the colors, you want to have different line weights. So for that, we can drop down and find over here. We can see we have this dimension style that we can have. By default, it gives us the ISO 25 and standards. If I click standards, so you can see that when I click over here, so it gives me different types of dimension, which is a lot smaller. With this, we can create our new one. So for that, you can go to manage dimension style, and it will show you this dimension style manager. Either you can modify or click new. That way you can create your own dimension. So click over here, drop down, and click dimension style, or you can also click at this icon, which is dimension style. Same things, same pop-up menu are going to show up. I don't want to modify either these two. I wanted to create a new one. So click new. Let's say I give it a name, my dimension 001, and continue. And then you can see this dimension configuration that you can see. Let me just make it a little bit bigger so you can see much easier. On the right side over here, we can see it gives us this preview on anything that you have changed. Over here, we have this line tab. We have the symbol and arrow, text, fits, and some other things. Let's go with the line first. So the line allows you to control the line. So we have dimension line. If I want to have different color, let's say I'm going to give it around cyan color. So you can see the line turns into cyan. I want my extension line to have the color of yellow. So I can go below here, the extension line, and select yellow and give you the yellow color. You can also change your line types. Maybe I want dash, dot, I can load some more. But for this case, I just want normal line. And over here, we can also suppress some of the lines that you may or may not want. Maybe I don't want to see this arrow. I can just suppress and it will turn off the arrow. Maybe I don't want to see this extension line, so I can just suppress. You can just suppress and delete the one. We also have this extend beyond dim line, which you can see we have some gaps over here. This is where we can select and configure it. And then over here we have symbol and arrow, which you can control. Maybe you don't want to see this type of arrow, so you can find over here. Let's say I want none, it will give me none. I want to have a close blank, it will give me the close blank. But let's say the other lines, the other arrow, I want different types of arrow. Let's say open, so I have different arrow. We can change the arrow size from here and some other things. But for this case, let's say I'm going to go with the close blank both, and I don't need to change the arrow size. So we also have some other things. Let's say text. Now from the text styles, so by default I only have one type of text styles. So if I want to create new, I can also click new over here. This one will actually be taken from your text styles, same with these dimension styles. But if you wanted to create new from here, also can just click on this three dot, and it will show you the text styles, and then you can create a new. But for this case, I'm just going to leave it as a default. And you can see we can change some colors, some of the things that you can come from here. The text height, we can configure from here. The text placements, maybe I want to have centers above, and some of the things you can find from here. Then we have some other things. Let's go with these three first. I'm going to go press OK and close. Then I can find on the annotate over here. It should change automatically. If I want to have different, just select. For this case, I'm going to choose the mine that I have created before. Directly when I create, and it will give me this this line. Now this one is quite small because I choose a copy from the standards, so that's why it becomes small. So if I want to have same with the size of ISO, I must make sure to select ISO first. All right. So let's take a look on some of the things. So for this case, let's say I want to create a new one. New, say my dimension 002. Let's say that I want to give a line that's in green, the symbols, this extension line will be yellow, and the text, let's say I want the text to be red. Okay, so we have these three. Let's take a look on the other one, the fit. So the fits allow you to just to configure the text location. For example, if the fit option, you can see over here, if there's not enough room, it will move to on the left or right. So you can select which is the first thing that we want to move first. For example, the one which is this one is text. So if I press OK, so you can see we should have some samples over here. You can see it is not enough room, so that's the reason why it showed it at the below over here. So that is the properties for the fit. Okay, let's get back to the dimension over here. Let's say fit. Now, the one that you might want to use the most, that will be the fine tuning. The scale for the dimension features. For example, like I have the problem earlier, which is this dimension 001. So which will be quite small. Oops. Okay. So for some reason it's become disappeared. Never mind. Let me just select standard instead. So you can see it is. Let me select dimension 001. Okay, so you can see it is quite small over here. Now I can go ahead and go back and modify it. I can modify the line, the baseline spacings. I can go to the symbol and arrow, just change the arrow size, make it a little bit bigger. The text, I can make sure the text is higher, but this one is very manual process. You have to choose one by one. So the best way is that you can select the fit, and this will scale the entire dimension. For example, I want this one to be at 10 times bigger. So when I press OK, now if I go back over here, so you can see it is now become 10 times bigger. So this one is actually smaller before. So if I go back and use my dimension 001, dimension, so you can see it is much bigger. So let's say I want it to be higher, so I go with the fit, let's say 20. Close. Okay, let me go back. Okay, so I needed to override first. 5 feet will be 20. So you can see it is become smaller once I have rescaled it. Right, on the fit, right, so you can scale the dimensions, which will scale everything. So let's take a look on the other things. The primary units. The primary units allow you to configure your units, such as the positions or also the dimension, what the dimension will be shown. Right, so maybe I don't want to see decimals, maybe scientifics or engineering. So you can see the preview from here. Because like the unit format, I'm just going to go with the decimals, and then we can see the precision. Let's say I want it to be a little bit smaller, like only 02 at the back. We can also select and create runoff. Maybe we want the decimal to be, let's say, comma or space, so we can find some of the things that we can find. You can also add some prefix or suffix. So let's say this one is actually on millimeters. So for that case, I want to make sure that at the back will be millimeters. So I add M, and it will show you the one will be turned into millimeter. So when I press OK, so you can see it's automatically updated for you. Right. So if I want an inch, I just type in inch, and it will change the suffix below. But the real millimeters on inch, the unit format, so that will be on the scale factor. So if, let's say, let me just go with the units. So right now my units for this drawing is on millimeter. If I go so if I go on the primary units over here, what we show over here is actually on millimeters. So if you want this one to show as an inch instead, so for that you can just input from the scale factor the value for each, how much you needed to divide or just times. So for the inch you needed to divide for round some things. So for the alternate units, we can see over here we have some samples that the multiply units that you can also refer to. But this one I'm just going to leave it as one. So let's say I want to add additional units. I can go to the alternate unit, and for this I can turn on display alternate unit, and it will show me the units that has been shown for me. Right. So 20.32 is not actually the multiply of 516. Actually, it's different. So I needed to change which is related to the inch instead. But let's say I want to have meters instead. So for that case, just basically 0.010. That will be 100, I believe. 0.10. So that will be based on millimeter. Will be based on meter. So I can add space and n, which indicate this one is actually on meters instead. So you can just change on the multiply, so it will allow you to set the alternate unit as well. And then lastly, we have this tolerance. So if you want to add tolerance, you can just use this tolerance format. So let's say if I just press OK, okay, that's not safe. It's because we have this override. No. So M. So it's okay, and it should show you. Now I want to add another one, which is the tolerance. So you can go to the tolerance over here. We also have different type of tolerance format. If I drop down over here, I have symmetrical. It will show me the plus minus, which is if you have the tolerance the same number, so you can use symmetrical. So by default, you can see we have too many information over here. So let me just turn off the alternate unit, and then you can see this tolerance much easier. I can adjust the position. I can add the value. Let's say I wanted to have a plus minus of 0.02, and it will give you this tolerance over here. Now, if I wanted to have different type of tolerance, so that will be deviation, and then it will give me the difference. Let's say at the lower value, I wanted to have a 0.05, and we can see we have different types of tolerance from here. Now, of course, the size of this is similar with the original one. So if I wanted to reduce this some more, for that case, you can go and scale the height. Let's say I'm just going to reduce into 0.6, and it will become much smaller compared to the original one. That's okay. And then you can see we have our tolerance show over here. So that is the tolerance for dimensioning. So we also have some extra tools for dimension. If you go to the annotate, over here we still have the same one, which is the dimension. We have these linear lines, basically the same things. We can change the dimension style from here. Some extra things we can find over here. We have break. For example, if I have this line over here, I don't want my lines to be intersect with my drawing lines, I can use break. So it's like dimension, it's like the line, and it will break for me. I have this adjust space. So if you have different line, for example, let me just delete this, and let me just create a new one. So I have this particular line over here, and I wanted to measure it based on the first one, which is this is the first one. Let's say I wanted to have a line together. I can choose adjust base, and I can select the first dimension that will be the base, and I can select the second one and the third one. When I press enter, I can enter the value from here. But for this case, I just want to align with this. So I can just enter 0, and it will become the same. So you can see. So we have some many information. Let me just try to pick a different dimension style. Let me just choose isometric, so you can see the line becomes something like this. But let's say if I want this line to be below over here, so I can select again the adjust base. This one will be the base. The second one will be following, then also the third one. And when I press enter, I can input a value. Let's say I want to have a, let's say 7, and it will measure 7 from the first one. So this one also should be able to measure as well, and it will allow you to measure each of these becomes 7. And input the 7 value, and you can see we have 7s and also 7. So you can use this to easily adjust the space between each line over here. We also have this dimension dim jog line. For example, if you have a line which is you have the object which is too long, but in this case you just wanted to show as, let's say, as if it is smaller, but in reality this is very, very long. So for that you can use the annotates for the dimension jog line. Right? So if I use dimension over here and I want to tell everyone this one is actually a smaller parts, so I can use dim jog line, and it will give me these symbols. Right? We also have some other things such as inspect, adjust, the update. So the update basically allow you to update if some changes has been made. And then we have this inspect, which allow you to just put some things like these shapes. Right? So if you wanted to have the shapes around your dimensions, you can just click, and it will give you this particular shape from here. Now we also have this continuous and also baselines, but to do this, you need to have a what we call as the first line first. So if I use this one, and then I can use continuous. If directly I don't have any dimensions, the continuous or the baseline cannot be used. So since I already have one, when I click continuous, it will continue from the last one. So I can just simply click and it will continue to the point that I have. So that is continuous. So let me just change back to ISO. Then from here, we also have the baseline. So if I choose baseline, I needed to have the first line first. So click and click first. Then I can continue with the baseline, and then you can see it is created over here continuously. If you drop down, we also have some extra things. Maybe you want to add some tolerance datum. So you can just input some symbols. So when I press OK, so we have these symbols over here. You can choose from the dimension. We have this oblique. Now oblique is, for example, if you create some isometric view from here, and then you want to have this isometric dimension. So if I try to create a line over here, you can see this lines is not very isometric compared to this object over here. So for that case, you can use oblique. So what I can do, just click the line, press enter, and I can enter the angles that I want my dimension line to follow. But to be much more easier, I can also just click from here, and it will trace back based on this line. So same goes with this. You can drop down, select oblique, select my dimension, and press enter and select the line that I want it to align with. So it becomes something like this. But from here, we can also adjust the text angles. Maybe I want to have different text angles. Right. So I can just simply input one here, and then you can rotate your text for your diameter. And you can also adjust the justifications. By default, we have on the middle. And if I want to have on the top, just click and it will change over here. And lastly, we have this override, basically just to override the last change that we made to our dimension. So we'll move back to the original position. So that is basically the things that I would like to share with you about the AutoCAD dimensions. So we have our home, which is a simplified version. We have dimensions, linears, lines, and so on that you can choose. We have gone through with some of the tools for the style manager, which you can create your own styles, the line, symbol, text, and some of the things. And lastly, we have gone through with the annotates, which is some of these extra tools that you can use. All right, so before I end the session for today, is there any question that you would like to ask? Right, so I believe no questions so far. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining our free lesson. And I hope this is useful for you. And I hope I can see you guys again on our next free lesson. Thank you everyone, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.